Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1513, and I want you to picture a farmhouse just outside the city walls of Florence. It's quiet, maybe a little run down.
Right?
And inside, there's a man sitting at a desk. He's middle-aged. He is, for all intents and purposes, unemployed, and he is flat broke.
And he's in bad shape physically. His shoulders are still healing because just a few weeks before this, he was hung from a rack. He was tortured.
Tortured by the new government. They thought he was a traitor.
It's a really grim picture. And by day, this man, who is Niccolò Machiavelli, he's out there snaring birds for food, arguing with local innkeepers over the price of wood, just trying to get by.
But then at night, something changes.
Something extraordinary. He goes into his study, he takes off his mud-stained work clothes, and he puts on the royal courtly robes that he used to wear.
Back when he was a diplomat.
Back when he had a job, exactly. He lights a candle and he starts to write.
And what he's writing is, it's basically a little handbook, a manual. And his goal is really simple. He just wants his job back.
It's a job application.
It is. He's writing it for the Medici family, the new rulers, and he's basically saying, look, I know you tortured me, but I know how the world worked. Hire me. I can show you how to rule.
And that little job application, well, it turned out to be the prince. Probably the most dangerous, misunderstood, and I'd say explosive manuscript in human history.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are not just skimming the surface of Machiavelli. We are not just going to throw around quotes like, the ends justify the means. We are going to tear apart the mechanics of power just as he saw them.
Exactly. And to do that, I think we need to start by clearing the air a little bit. Because when people hear Machiavelli, they immediately picture this cartoon villain.
Right, a mustache-twirling bad guy.
Yeah, someone who teaches people how to be evil.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's lazy. The Prince is not a book about morality. It's not a book about ethics. It is a book about physics.
Physics.
The physics of power. I mean, think about it. Gravity doesn't care if you're a nice person or a cruel person.
Right.
If you step off a cliff, gravity pulls you down, period. Machiavelli was just the first person to write down the formula for political gravity. He's looking at cause and effect. If you do X, Y will happen.
It doesn't matter if X is good or bad.
It only matters if it works.
So our mission today is to really dig into that formula. We're going to look at his specific instructions on, well, how to steal a state, why violence is just a tool like a hammer or a wrench.
And that terrifying relationship between luck and skill, or as he calls it, fortune and virtue.
And ultimately, we have to try and answer the big question. Was this thing really a manual for tyrants?
Or was it a warning label for the rest of us?
Let's dive in. Part 1, the landscape of power. So Machiavelli starts this book almost like an engineer looking at a blueprint. He wants to categorize everything.
It's very, very binary. He just says, look, all states that has ever existed are either republics or principalities.
Okay. Simple enough.
And he immediately just sweeps republics right off the table. He says, I've written about those elsewhere, which he had. He wants to focus entirely on the principality. That's ruled by a single central figure, a prince.
And then he divides those into 2 buckets.
Hereditary and new.
Okay, so hereditary seems like easy mode in a video game.
It is absolutely easy mode. If you're a hereditary prince, it just means your family has been on the throne for a long, long time. The people are used to you. The roots of your power, as he says, are deep.
So you don't have to work very hard.
Not really. Machiavelli argues that a hereditary prince only has to do 2 things. 1, don't change the laws your ancestors set up.
Okay, don't rock the boat.
And 2, just don't be insanely incompetent. That's it. You can actually be a pretty mediocre ruler in a hereditary state and survive. Time is on your side. People love tradition.
So unless you do something totally catastrophic, you're probably safe.
Right. The momentum of history just keeps you in the chair.
But Machiavelli, he gets bored with easy mode pretty fast, doesn't he? He wants to talk about the danger zone.
Yes. The mixed principality. This is where the real analysis begins.
So what is that exactly?
A mixed principality is when you are an existing ruler and you conquer a new territory and you try to sort of staple it onto your old empire.
So you're the king of France and you conquer Milan.
Exactly. Milan is the new part that's now mixed with the old. And this is where he introduces this brilliant concept I think you found fascinating, the problem of hope.
Yes. It's such a great psychological insight. He asks this question, why is it so easy to invade a place, but so incredibly hard to keep it?
And the answer is, usually when you invade a new country, you actually have help from the inside. The locals, they often open the gates for you.
Which seems crazy. Why would they do that? Why invite an invader in?
Hope. It's just simple hope. They're unhappy with their current ruler. They think, well, if we let this new guy in, things have to get better. They think they're trading up. It's buyer's optimism.
But the reality hits them pretty fast.
Oh, yeah, because once the new prince is inside, the hard reality of conquest sets in. You have to secure the territory.
Right. You need your soldiers everywhere.
So you have to quarter your soldiers in their houses. You have to tax them to pay for the whole invasion. You have to hunt down the supporters of the old ruler. And very, very quickly, those people who open the gates for you realize they've made a huge mistake.
Things haven't gotten better.
They've gotten worse.
So now you've offended the people you beat, and you've disappointed the people who helped you. You're totally isolated.
You're stuck. And you can't just give the people who help you everything they want, because then you look weak. This is the trap of the mixed principality. And Machiavelli, he uses a very specific case study to show this failure in action. King Louis XII of France.
Oh, this poor guy. Louis XII seems to be Machiavelli's favorite punching bag. He's the anti-model for everything.
He really is. I mean, Louis XII marched into Italy. He took Milan almost instantly, and then he lost it just as fast.
Then he did it again.
He took it again and lost it again. So Machiavelli sits down and he lists 5 specific strategic errors that Louis made. It's like reading a corporate postmortem on a failed project.
Okay, let's run through them because they're incredibly specific. Mistake number 1. He destroyed the weak powers. What does that mean?
Right. So when you enter a new political ecosystem, there are usually a bunch of smaller, weaker states around, and they're terrified of the big power you just replaced. Louis went in, he just smashed those little guys.
Which was a mistake.
A huge mistake. He should have protected them. If you become the defender of the weak, they become your allies. They're your buffer zone. By destroying them, he basically removed his own support network.
Okay. Mistake number 2. He increased the power of a strong power.
The church. He actively helped Pope Alexander VI expand the church's territory in Italy. I mean, if you're trying to be the dominant power in a region, why on earth would you help your biggest rival get stronger?
You want to be the biggest fish in the pond.
And Louis was feeding the shark that was swimming right next to him. It's just bad strategy.
Mistake number 3. He brought in a powerful foreigner.
This one is just basic. He invited Spain to help him split the kingdom of Naples. He brought another superpower onto the peninsula.
It's like he's inviting trouble.
Machiavelli's basically screaming at the page here. You never invite a shark into your pool to help you eat a goldfish. Because once the goldfish is gone, you're just in the pool with another shark. By inviting Spain, Louis gave all his unhappy subjects a new, powerful alternative to turn to.
And then come the more practical mistakes. Number 4, he didn't live there. And number 5, he didn't send colonies.
And these are the 2 big solutions Machiavelli proposes. He says if you conquer a place with a different language, different customs, the absolute best thing you can do is move there.
Pack up the whole court.
Move the capital. If you're on the ground, you see trouble rising when it's just a spark. You can stomp it out. But if you're back in Paris, you only hear about the rebellion when the whole province is already on fire.
Okay, but if you can't live there, he has option B, colonies. Now, when we hear colonies, we think of, the British Empire or something. What does Machiavelli mean here?
He means displacement. It's much smaller scale. He says you should take a group of your own loyal citizens, maybe a few hundred families, and you move them into a few key strategic towns in the new territory.
And you give them land and houses. They become your anchors in this new place.
Right. But where do you get the land and houses?
Uh-oh.
You take them.
You steal them from the locals.
That sounds incredibly risky. Wouldn't that cause a massive rebellion?
See, this is the cold economic logic of tyranny that he lays out. He argues that colonies are actually cheap. You don't have to pay your citizens to live there. You just give them the stolen land.
And who do you steal from?
A tiny minority. Maybe you displace 5% of the population. And Machiavelli argues that those people, the ones you just dispossessed, well, they're now poor, they're scattered, they're homeless, they have no power, they can't hurt you.
And what about the other 95%? They keep their heads down for 2 reasons. First, they haven't lost anything personally, so they're relieved.
Okay.
And second, they're terrified that if they speak up, their house will be next. It creates this state of fearful paralysis.
Compare that to the alternative, which is what most people did, just garrisoning troops.
Right. If you send a big army to hold the city, it costs a fortune. You have to feed them, pay them, and the soldiers are just annoying. They harass the locals, they get into bar fights, they sleep in people's barns.
So you make everyone angry.
If you use an army, you turn the entire population against you. If you use colonies, you only hurt a few, and you scare the rest into silence. Machiavelli says colonies are more faithful and less offensive.
It's brutal, but efficient. And this leads to what is, I think, the quote that literally made me shiver when I first read it, the golden rule of injury.
Men must be either caressed or crushed.
Let's unpack that, because that sounds like something a mob boss would say.
It is exactly what a mob boss would say.
Right.
Because the logic is identical. It's all about the mechanics of revenge. Machiavelli says that if you do a medium amount of damage to someone, if you just find them or you demote them or you insult them publicly, they survive.
And they remember.
They survive. They still have their resources. They still have their connections. And they will use every single one of those resources to plot revenge against you.
So you've just created an enemy who is still strong enough to actually hurt you.
Precisely. But if you crush them, if you take everything they have, if you destroy their family, or if you kill them, they cannot take revenge. The threat is permanently removed.
So the lesson is never just wound someone.
If you are going to strike, you must strike so hard that you never have to fear the return blow. There's no safe middle ground when it comes to violence.
It's terrifying. Mild violence just creates resentment. Total violence in his world creates security.
It's a horrible thought, but in the context of these brutal power struggles, he argues it's the only safe path.
This feels like the perfect transition to the next big theme, because to execute that kind of logic, you need a specific kind of person. We need to talk about virtue versus fortune.
Virtue and fortuna. These are the two great warring forces in Machiavelli's universe, and we have to be so careful with that word virtue.
Right, because when we say virtue today, we think of moral goodness. We think of like a Sunday school teacher.
Patience, kindness, honesty.
Yeah.
That is definitely not what Machiavelli means.
Not at all.
No. For him, virtue comes from the Latin root vir, which means man. It's about manly energy. It's prowess. It's skill, courage, decisiveness. It's the raw ability to impose your will on the world.
So a man with virtue is a man who can build a dam to stop a river.
And the river is fortune.
Luck?
Luck. Chaos, the circumstances you're born into. It's everything outside of your control. And Machiavelli says you can acquire power in one of two ways.
Yeah. By
fortune, which means someone just gives it to you, or you get lucky. Or by virtue, which means you fight and bleed for it.
And he says fortune is a complete trap.
It's a total trap. If you become a prince just because your dad was the king or because you bought the office with money, you're like a tree with new roots. You haven't done the work. You don't know how to command. You don't know how to deal with adversity.
So the first storm that comes along just blows you over.
Gone. But if you use virtue, well, getting the power is incredibly hard. You have to struggle. You have to fight. But keeping it is easier.
Because the struggle itself built your muscles.
You learned who your real enemies were. You learned how to negotiate. You built that root system brick by brick.
Now, Machiavelli has a hero in this book, a kind of model for the perfect new prince. And it's a name that, historically is usually synonymous with corruption and pure evil.
Cesare Borgia.
Duke Valentino.
It is so fascinating that he chooses him. I mean, Cesare Borgia was the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI. He was famous for incest, murder, bribery, the works, but Machiavelli watched him up close as a diplomat, and he was just mesmerized.
And Borgia actually started with fortune, right? His dad was the Pope, which is a pretty good card to be dealt.
A very good card. His dad gave him an army. His dad threw all of Italy into chaos, just to carve out a little state for him. So Cesare starts the game on easy mode. But he realized very quickly that it was a trap.
How so? What was the trap?
He realized that his army, which was made up of mercenaries and troops he'd borrowed from the King of France, wasn't actually loyal to him.
They were loyal to their paychecks.
Or their own king. He realized that as long as he was relying on his father's influence and other people's swords, he wasn't safe. If the Pope died tomorrow, or if the French king changed his mind, Cesare was finished. He was a tree with no roots.
So he made a conscious decision to switch from fortune to virtue.
Exactly. He decided to systematically eliminate his dependence on others. He started building his own army, loyal only to him. He started to exterminate the powerful families that opposed him. He started, finally, to put down roots.
And this leads to the Ramiro de Orco story. I think this is, hands down, the most cinematic and revealing moment in the entire book.
It is the ultimate example of what we would now call Machiavellian management. So Borgia conquers the Romagna region of Italy.
Okay.
Now, the Romani had been ruled by these weak, incompetent little lords before him. The place was a total disaster. Robbery in the streets, blood feuds, complete anarchy. Borgia knows he has to pacify it. He needs law and order.
But he knows that establishing law and order is going to be messy.
It's going to be brutal. To stop the bandits, you have to be more brutal than they are. And if Borgia goes in and starts executing people himself, the population is going to hate him. They'll see him as just another tyrant.
So he outsources the cruelty.
He hires a guy,
The hatchet man.
Ramiro de Orco. Machiavelli describes him simply as a cruel and able man. Borgia gives him absolute power. He says, go fix it. And Ramiro does. He goes in with an iron fist. He executes the bandits. He crushes the feuds. He terrifies the entire population into submission. And in a very short time, the Romagna is peaceful and united.
Mission accomplished. But now Borgia has a new problem.
A big one. The problem is that Ramiro was so cruel that everybody hates his guts. And Borgia is smart enough to worry that the hatred for his deputy is going to splash back onto him. He needs to distance himself.
He needs to show the people that the order and peace is his gift, but the cruelty was all Ramiro's fault.
Exactly. So, set the scene. It's a cold morning in the town of Siena. The people wake up, they walk into the public square, and there, in the middle of the piazza, is Ramiro de Orco.
What happened to him?
He has been cut in half. His body is in 2 pieces.
Wow.
And next to the body is a block of wood and a bloody knife. No note, no explanation, just the body.
Wow. That is gruesome.
And Machiavelli writes that this spectacle left the people at once satisfied and stupefied.
Those 2 words are so heavy, satisfied and stupefied.
They are absolutely crucial. The people were satisfied because the man they hated, the cruel tyrant, was dead. They felt justice had been served. But they were stupefied by the sheer terrifying power of Borgia.
They realized, wait a minute.
Ramiro was the toughest, most brutal guy we knew, and Borgia just snapped his fingers and had him cut in half. It created this deep, visceral respect that was mixed with absolute fear.
It was a masterstroke of public relations in a really twisted way.
Right.
He got the benefit of the cruelty, which was the law and order, and then he got the benefit of the mercy by punishing the cruel man.
Precisely. That is virtue in Machiavelli's eyes. Knowing exactly which tool to use and knowing exactly when to break that tool and throw it away.
But there's a dark side to this virtue, right? I mean, can you go too far? He brings up Agathocles the Sicilian. This guy was a potter who rose up to become king of Syracuse. And he didn't do it by being a clever diplomat.
No. Agathocles is Machiavelli's example of crime as a path to power. He rose up through the ranks of the military, and one day he just decided he wanted to be the prince. So he called a meeting of the Senate and all the richest citizens of Syracuse.
He said he needed to discuss urgent state matters.
And at a prearranged signal, his soldiers turned around and killed them all. Every last senator. Every single rich guy. In 1 hour, Agathocles eliminated all of his rivals and seized the city.
And did it work?
It worked perfectly. He held power for decades. He fought off the Carthaginians. He died in his bed as an old man. So Machiavelli has to admit, this method works. But, and this is a very, very important but, he refuses to call it virtue.
Why not? If it worked, and Machiavelli only cares about what works, why isn't Agathocles a hero like Borgia?
Because, he says, one cannot call it virtue to kill one's citizens, betray one's friends, to be without faith, without mercy, without religion. He says these methods can gain you empire, but they will not gain you glory.
So there's a hierarchy here. You can be a successful thug, but that doesn't make you a great prince.
Exactly. Agathocles was a butcher. Borgia was a statesman who used a butcher. There's a difference in style, a difference in finesse, and a difference in legacy.
This leads to another one of his famous concepts. Cruelty well used versus cruelty badly used, which, to our modern ears, sounds like a total oxymoron. How can cruelty ever be well used?
It goes back to that Band-Aid theory. Machiavelli argues that if you have to be violent to secure your new state, if you have to purge the old regime, execute the traitors, whatever it is, you should do it all at once. A massive single wave of violence.
Get it over with quickly.
Yes, because people's memory of pain is surprisingly short. If you execute 100 people in 1 week, it's terrifying. But then it stops. The silence returns. People breathe a sigh of relief. Eventually, they start to forget the specifics of the horror. That, to him, is cruelty well used.
And cruelty badly used.
That's when you're squeamish. You don't want to kill everyone at once, so you kill one person today. Then a week later, you realize you missed someone, so you kill them. Then another person and another. You drag it out over months or years.
That sounds like it would be much worse for the population.
It is infinitely worse, because nobody ever feels safe. If the killing never stops, the population lives in a state of constant terror. They can't settle down. They can't do business. And the prince has to hold that bloody knife in his hand every single day. Machiavelli says this path leads to inevitable ruin.
So the formula is cruelty all at once. Benefits like tax cuts or festivals or building projects, you hand those out drop by drop, little by little.
Exactly. Make the bad taste fade quickly, but make the good taste last as long as possible.
Let's pivot to the machinery that actually enforces all of this. Part 3, the art of war. Machiavelli seems almost obsessed with the idea that the prince shouldn't have any other hobby.
He is incredibly blunt about this. He says a prince should have no other object, no other thought, no other profession, but war. It's rules, it's discipline. A prince who doesn't understand war is despised by his own soldiers.
And if your soldiers despise you, you're a dead man walking.
Pretty much. And he categorizes armies into 3 basic types: mercenaries, auxiliaries, and your own arms. And boy, does he have a special hatred for mercenaries.
You have to understand the context, right? Renaissance Italy was just plagued by these condottieri.
These mercenary captains, they were basically contractors, they were businesses. They had zero loyalty to any state. They just fought for the highest bidder.
And Machiavelli says they are useless and dangerous.
Well, think about the incentive structure. A mercenary works for a paycheck. And that little bit of money is enough to make him march in a parade for you, but it's not enough to make him want to die for you.
Why would he? It's not his city.
Exactly. He doesn't live there. So as Machiavelli says, they are brave among friends, cowardly among enemies. In peacetime, they rob you by taking your money. In wartime, they just abandon you to save their own skins.
He blames the entire collapse of Italy on this.
He does. The fact that the French and Spanish could just walk in and take over, he lays that squarely at the feet of Italy's reliance on mercenaries.
Okay, so then there are auxiliaries. This is when you call up a powerful neighbor like France or Spain and you say, hey, can you bring your army over and help me out?
And Machiavelli says this is even more dangerous than mercenaries.
More dangerous? How?
Because mercenaries might be lazy or cowardly. But auxiliaries are usually united, efficient, and powerful. They're a real army. The problem is they don't work for you. They work for their own king.
It sets up a complete no-win scenario.
Totally. If the auxiliaries lose the battle, well, you're defeated. But if they win the battle for you, you are now their prisoner.
You just let a lion into your house to kill a wolf.
And the wolf is dead, but now you got a lion in your living room. Good luck with that.
So if mercenaries are useless and auxiliaries are a trap, what's left?
Own arms, citizen soldiers, your own subjects. People who are fighting for their own homes, their own families, their own freedom. Machiavelli is really the father of the modern idea of the militia or the conscript army. He says no principality is secure unless it owns its own sword.
And he says the prince needs to be training for this constantly, even in peacetime. He should go hunting.
Yeah, but hunting for him isn't just a hobby. It's a military simulation. When you're out hunting, you learn the terrain. You learn where the mountains are, how the rivers flow, where the swamps begin.
So you know your own country like the back of your hand.
Which means you can defend it. And if you understand how nature works in one place, you can look at a foreign landscape and quickly grasp the tactical layout. It's training your eye.
And he also says to read history, but not for fun.
No, read history as a series of case studies. Look at the great men. Alexander the Great imitated Achilles. Caesar imitated Alexander. You analyze their victories so you can copy them, and you analyze their defeats so you can avoid making the same mistakes. You treat history as a giant database of strategy.
Okay, so we have the army, we have the training, now we need the behavior. And this brings us to part 4, the truth of power. This is the part of the book that really, truly shocked the world. This is chapter 15.
This is the turning point. Before Machiavelli, for 2,000 years, political writers, from Plato to Cicero to all the Christian scholars, they all wrote about imagined republics. Exactly. They wrote about how a prince should act. They made these long lists of virtues. A leader should be honest, kind, generous, just, pious.
And Machiavelli just throws all of that out the window.
He shatters the window. He says, many have imagined republics that never existed. He says there's a huge gap between how we ought to live and how we actually live. And here's the killer line. He says, a man who tries to be good all the time will be ruined among so many who are not good.
That is the thesis statement of realpolitik right there.
It is. He's saying that if you play by the rules of Sunday school in a game where everyone else is cheating, you are guaranteed to lose. And when a prince loses, the whole state collapses and thousands of people die. So the prince must learn how not to be good and how to use that knowledge only when it is absolutely necessary.
Let's look at his take on generosity, or liberality as he calls it. We usually think a generous leader is a good leader. We like politicians who promise us things.
And Machiavelli says generosity is a trap. It's a complete paradox. Think it through. To be known as generous, you have to be sumptuous. You have to throw big parties, build statues, give lavish gifts to your friends. You have to spend a lot of money.
And eventually that money runs out.
Right. And when the treasury is empty, what do? You can't just stop, because then you'll look weak and they'll call you a miser. So you have to tax the people. You have to become rapacious. You have to squeeze your own subjects to pay for your so-called generosity.
So the very people you wanted to impress now end up hating you.
Exactly. Your desire to be liked has led directly to you being hated. And when you finally run out of money completely, you're poor, so you're also despised. It's a total lose-lose situation.
So the alternative is to just be a miser, be cheap.
Yes, accept the bad reputation up front. If you're a miser, you don't waste money. That means your treasury is full.
Right.
So when a war comes, you can defend the state without raising taxes. You don't have to squeeze the common people.
So in a weird roundabout way, being a miser is actually more generous to the population as a whole.
That's his argument. You are being generous to the 99% of people you didn't have to tax, and you're only being miserly to the 1% of courtiers who wanted a handout. It's about playing the long game versus the short game.
Okay, now for the big one. Cruelty versus mercy. Fear versus love.
This is the most famous debate in the whole book. Machiavelli asks the question, is it better to be loved or feared? Ideally, he says, you want both. But they rarely go together. So if you have to choose one,
You choose fear.
it is safer to be feared.
Why? Why is fear safer?
It comes down to his very cynical view of human nature. He says men are ungrateful, fickle, pretenders, and avoiders of danger. He says that love is a chain of obligation. And because people are fundamentally selfish, they will break that chain the moment it benefits them.
So love is volatile. It depends entirely on the mood of the people, which you can't control.
Right. They love you while you're giving them stuff. But the second danger approaches, they turn on you. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment that never fails. You control fear. You hold the whip. You cannot control love. And a wise prince relies on what is in his own control, not what's in the control of others.
But there is a limit, a very, very important limit.
Yes, this is absolutely crucial. You want to be feared, but you must at all costs avoid being hated.
And fear and hatred are different things.
They are completely different. Fear is a form of respect. Fear is, I better follow the law because the prince will punish me if I don't. Hatred is, I want to kill that guy. Hatred is what leads to assassination and rebellion.
So how do you avoid being hated?
Machiavelli gives a very simple, very practical recipe. Keep your hands off their property and keep your hands off their women.
That's the third rail of politics.
He writes one of the most chilling lines in all of political philosophy. Men forget the death of their father sooner than the loss of their patrimony. It's a grim observation, but think about it. If you execute a noble's father for treason, he might be angry, but he might also move on. But if you confiscate his family estate, if you make him poor, he will hate you every single day for the rest of his life. He will never stop plotting.
So kill if you must, but don't steal.
Precisely. Blood can be washed away in a political sense. Theft is permanent.
He also talks about avoiding contempt. That's different from hatred, too.
Contempt is when people look down on you. They think you're pathetic. You become contemptible if you're seen as being changeable, frivolous, effeminate, or indecisive. If you say one thing today and something completely different tomorrow.
You need to be seen as a rock. Your word is law.
Grave. Serious.
No.
Irrevocable. When you make a decision, it's done. Even if it turns out to be a wrong decision, stick to it. Strength is respected. Wavering is despised.
He spends a lot of time analyzing the Roman emperors to prove these points, doesn't he?
He loves the Romans as case studies. He contracts Emperor Severus and Emperor Commodus. Severus was a brutal man, but he was a lion and a fox. He was strong and he was clever. The people feared him, but the soldiers respected him. And he died in power.
And Commodus.
Commodus was cruel, so he was hated. But he was also completely undignified. He used to go down into the amphitheater and fight gladiators. He thought it made him look cool.
But the Romans thought it was disgusting.
He was low class, an emperor rolling around in the dirt with slaves, so the soldiers despised him. And hated plus despised, that equals assassination, every time.
Okay, moving on to part 5. the actual mechanics of the prince's personality, the fox and the lion.
This is one of his most enduring metaphors. Machiavelli says a prince has to know how to use the nature of the beast. Laws are for men, forces for beasts, and sometimes laws just aren't enough.
So you have to be willing to act like an animal.
But which animal? He picks two, the lion and the fox. The lion is pure force. It's strong enough to frighten the wolves. But the lion's also kind of dumb. It steps in traps. It just charges blindly ahead.
And the fox.
The fox is weak. It can't fight a wolf head-on. But the fox is smart. It recognizes the traps. It can sneak around them. And Machiavelli says, you have to be both. If you're only a lion, you'll get trapped.
And if you're only a fox?
The wolves will just eat you. You need the lion's strength and the fox's cunning.
And being the fox means being a liar.
A great simulator and dissimulator. He deals with the question of honesty head-on. He asks, should a prince keep his promises?
And the answer is a resounding no.
Well, the answer is only if it helps you. He says a prudent ruler cannot keep his word if keeping it harms him, or if the reasons for making the promise have changed.
And his justification for this is, again, human nature.
If men were all good, this advice would not be good. But because they are wicked and will not keep their word to you, you do not have to keep yours to them.
It's like a preemptive strike on honesty. You break your word first because you assume they're going to break theirs.
He points to Pope Alexander VI again. He says Alexander never did anything but deceive people. He promised things constantly that he never intended to deliver. And he was wildly successful. Why? Because he understood that people want to be deceived. They judge by appearances.
Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are.
That is the quote. You must appear to have all the virtues. You should look merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and especially religious. Religion is the best possible mask. But inside, deep down, you must be ready at a moment's notice to be the exact opposite. You must have a mind ready to turn itself accordingly as the winds of fortune command.
This leads perfectly into the final section before the end, the concept of adaptability, part 6.
Chapter 25. He's talking about the relationship between our free will and fortune, and he uses that beautiful river analogy.
That's a great image.
He says fortune is like a raging, flooding river. When the flood comes, it destroys everything in its path. Trees, houses, topsoil, everyone runs away. You cannot stop the flood while it's happening.
So we're just helpless. It's all up to fate.
No, because the flood doesn't last forever. When the weather is calm, men can build dikes and dams. They can dig canals so that when the flood comes back next year, the water is channeled. It doesn't destroy everything.
So you prepare for bad luck during the good times.
Exactly. And he says Italy is a country without any dams. That's why it's being flooded over and over by these foreign armies. But then he takes it a step further when it comes to adaptability. He looks at Pope Julius II again.
The warrior pope.
Julius was a man of what he called impetuous nature. He was aggressive, fast, violent. And he succeeded because the times he lived in required immediate, violent action.
So he was just lucky that his personality matched the moment.
That's the point. Machiavelli warns, if Julius had lived longer and the times had changed to require caution and patience, he would have been ruined. Because he couldn't change his nature. He only knew how to be a lion. If the situation suddenly needed a fox, he would have failed miserably. The truly great prince, the ideal prince, can actually change his nature to match the times. But Machiavelli admits this is almost impossible for humans to do. We are stuck in our ways.
And this leads to that famous gendered metaphor. We have to address it because it's in the text. Fortune is a woman.
It definitely reflects the worldview of the 1500s. He says fortune is a woman, and because of that, she likes the young and the bold. She resists the cautious old men. Therefore, to keep her in submission, she must be beaten and coerced.
It's very violent imagery.
It is. It's all about domination. He's saying that in a world of pure chaos, hesitation is death. It is better to act and fail than to do nothing at all. Fortune favors the bold.
And finally, we get to the end of the book, chapter 26. And all of a sudden, the tone completely shifts.
It is so jarring. For 25 chapters, Machiavelli has been this cold, detached analyst, a scientist in a lab dissecting power. But in the final chapter, he bursts into tears. It becomes emotional. It becomes a prayer.
He looks at the state of Italy around him.
And he describes Italy as beaten, stripped, overrun. It's a disaster zone. The French, the Spanish, the Swiss, they're all just trampling over his country. And he turns to the Medici family, the people he's writing this book for, and he says, You are the ones.
He sees them as the potential saviors.
He compares Italy to the Israelites in Egypt, waiting for Moses to lead them out of slavery. He says all this chaos has created the perfect opportunity for a redeemer. He urges the Medici to arm Italy, to create this own arms military we talked about, and to drive the barbarians out.
He even gets back into the tactical weeds one last time. He says the Swiss infantry has a flaw, the Spanish infantry has a flaw.
The Swiss are bad against cavalry. The Spanish are bad against the Swiss pikes. He says, so let's invent a third type of infantry that can beat them both. It's this passionate plea for national unity and military innovation.
It ends with a poem by Petrarch. Virtue against fury shall take up arms, and the combat will be short, for the ancient valor is not yet dead in Italian hearts.
Oh, it's a stirring, patriotic, hopeful ending. It shows you he didn't just write this to get a paycheck. He wrote it because he desperately wanted his country to survive.
So what happened? He sends this incredible manuscript to the Medici. Does he get the job?
No.
Nothing.
They basically ignored it. Lorenzo de' Medici, the guy it was dedicated to, probably never even read it. There's a famous story that when Machiavelli came to present the book, another courtier showed up at the same time and presented a pair of hunting dogs.
Yeah.
And Lorenzo was much more interested in the dogs.
Ouch. It's gotta hurt.
Machiavelli died poor, out of power, and largely unknown outside of Florence. The ultimate manual for acquiring power didn't get him any power at all.
That is the ultimate irony, isn't it? But it did get him immortality.
It did. It completely changed how we see the world.
So let's try to wrap this up. Why are we still reading this book 500 years later? What's the final takeaway?
I think it's because Machiavelli was the first person to just strip the mask off the system. Before him, we all pretended that leaders were appointed by God to be gentle shepherds. We pretended it was all about morality and virtue. And Machiavelli just walked us into the butcher shop in the back room and showed us how the sausage was made.
There is that famous theory, I think it's Rousseau who first mentioned it, that maybe The Prince wasn't actually written for princes at all.
The satire theory, or maybe the democratic reading. The idea is that maybe Machiavelli knew the Medici wouldn't read it, or that they just wouldn't get it. Maybe he was writing it for us.
For the common people.
Exactly. By publishing the secret playbook of the tyrants, by laying it all out in the open, he was handing the blueprint to the victims. He was saying, look, this is how they trick you. This is how they fake religion. This is how they use fear against you. This is how they calculate whether to kill your father or just steal your farm.
So it's not a handbook, it's a warning label.
It's a warning label. Once you read The Prince, you can never watch the news the same way again. You don't see a smiling politician, you see a fox setting a trap. You don't see a tough-talking leader, you see a lion trying to scare the wolves. You see the mechanics underneath it all.
So the final question is The Prince a weapon for the ruler, or is it a shield for the ruled?
I think it's both.
Okay.
And that's exactly why it's so dangerous and so important.
That is something for you to think about next time you see a campaign ad. Thanks for diving deep with us into the mind of Machiavelli.
See you next time.